Welcome back to SM Sports Radio, and it's a pretty exciting week. We had a lot happen in Major League Baseball this past week, and we've got the NFL Draft upcoming on Thursday, which I'm super excited for. Samuel, how you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. I'm very curious to see who my Falcons look to get at number 8. There's a lot of debate there, whether it's going to be an edge or a wide receiver or which of those positions, which guy in those positions it's going to be. And just overall, as a sports fan, pretty good week. Got the NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs going on. And the draft is always an exciting time for NFL fans. So a great time to be a sports fan.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave the NHL playoffs a shout out. I know we don't talk hockey that much, but I'm a big hockey guy. I unfortunately am a fan of the worst team in the league, the San Jose Sharks, so don't have my team in the playoffs, but playoff hockey is always special. But I know you mentioned wanting to know what your Falcons do at number 8. How about we find out? Let's do a little first round mock draft right here. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we're going to dive right in with the Chicago Bears at number 1. And I think as soon as they traded away Justin Fields, and for most rational people before they traded away Justin Fields, we knew this was Caleb Williams. The traits that he has are just outstanding. Has elite arm talent, very good at improvisation, and can really just make those high level plays that I think Chicago was looking for in a guy. And maybe you expected to get with Justin Fields, it just didn't pan out.
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing that would make me sort of question Caleb Williams' ability to translate to the next level is maybe the level of competition that he faced in college. Obviously, in that first year, facing Big 12 defenses over there at Oklahoma, but then especially in those last couple years, including his Heisman winning campaign, you're going against Pac-12 defenses that, quite frankly, just aren't too strong. And these NFL defenses are a different animal, as we know. But this definitely seems like the safe pick for the Bears, and we'll see if Caleb Williams lives up to the generational hype which he has been given for quite some time now.
Yeah, it's always tough to project quarterbacks. And one thing I want to say is we talked about quarterbacks here. Everyone whose draft hot take is, oh, this quarterback's going to be a bust. It's not impressive if you're right. The hit rate on quarterbacks is so astonishingly low compared to every other position. If your hot take is that, oh, a quarterback might not be good, you're not really, it's not a hot take, no matter which quarterback you pick. So just wanted to put that out there. But speaking of quarterbacks, we're going to stay with them as we move to the Washington Commanders here at number 2, and it's going to be Jaden Daniels. I think that Drake May is a better prospect than Jaden Daniels, but I think the Commanders bringing in Marcus Mariota might not seem important, but bringing in a guy I think you would want to have a backup quarterback in the system who has a similar play style to your starter, and he more closely mirrors Jaden Daniels than Drake May. I'm not saying Jaden Daniels is Marcus Mariota. I think he's a much better player. He has great ability to create on the run, and he also has exceptional downfield accuracy. We'll say the situation at LSU was very good, so that can make a quarterback look better, but I still think this is a very, very good player.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's going to be a pick that Commanders fans would actually like better in the short term, at least, than if the Commanders were to draft Drake May, which just simply because Drake May comes out of the same college that their previous starting quarterback Sam Howell did. So fans probably have a little bit of UNC Chapel Hill fatigue in that aspect. That's sort of an unfair comparison, as we know, as Drake May's a much better prospect than Sam Howell, but probably something at least worth talking about when you think about just fan perception in general.
Yeah, definitely. But speaking of Drake May, he is the pick at 3 for the New England Patriots, and this is a guy that I just love. He's my quarterback 1, and actually the number 1 overall player on my big board for this year's draft. I think that he and Caleb Williams are 1A and 1B. I do not in any way think that Caleb Williams is a bad prospect or not a good prospect, but Drake May is just absolutely outstanding. The one knock I have on Caleb Williams is that improvisation stuff, like you said, the Pac 12 competition. A lot of times you don't get that same time, that same leeway versus NFL defenses, and I think Drake May's game translates a little bit better to the NFL level than Caleb Williams' does. May has a rocket arm, can still create on the run. He's a right-handed quarterback that's thrown a left-handed touchdown this past season, so he can make magic happen out there, is good at reading different levels of the field. Some concerns with his footwork, but that is coachable stuff that can be worked out. So I have full faith in Drake May being a good player, even in a situation as bad as New England, which I think would definitely kill some of the other QB prospects in this draft, say a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix or a JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, for sure. And when you're evaluating Drake May, you're looking at the tape, you're looking at the stats. You got to consider that Drake May's playing for a North Carolina team this past season that lost four of its five starting offensive linemen from the year prior, and two starting receivers were out for a majority of the year. You lost one to the NFL, and then Tez Walker not able to play until the back half of the season. So Drake May, not many weapons in that offense, and still able to put up pretty good numbers. I love this pick at number 3 for the Patriots, and for Patriots fans out there, this would be a great get for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Then at number 4, the Arizona Cardinals. This is Marvin Harrison Jr. You lost almost the entire receiving core with Rondale Moore going to Atlanta and Hollywood Brown signing with Kansas City. You still have Michael Wilson, who I think is a good player, but let's be honest, he's not Marvin Harrison Jr., and not a lot of people are. This guy has elite body control, can really track the ball through the air really well, a very exceptional route runner, just a super polished receiver prospect, one of the best I've seen in my time scouting, and I think he's going to make Arizona very happy.
Yeah, and all the things you just mentioned sort of make up for the fact that he's not necessarily the elite athlete that you sometimes see for receivers taken this high in the draft. But like you said, this is a guy you can't miss on. Definitely going to be an impact player at the next level.
For sure. Then on to my team, the LA Chargers, here at number 5. It's going to be a trade. This has been a very popular trade spot in a lot of mock drafts, and I'm going to have the Minnesota Vikings trading up. The trade compensation you see on the screen right now is not exact. I think it's almost pointless to try to predict trade compensation. The point is just that the trade happens. I definitely think it will include both 11 and 23, though. So the Vikings trade up with the Los Angeles Chargers, and they are going J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan. I think this might be a pick that does not get much love at all, but NFL teams draft on traits. McCarthy's the youngest quarterback in this class. He has a big arm. His downfield accuracy, I will admit, is a huge concern. But him over the middle of the field, short areas of the field, he's been effective at Michigan, and comparing him to these other players who have much more experience, I think it's almost slightly unfair to him. You look at a guy like Michael Penix and say, well, Michael Penix looks much more polished than J.J. McCarthy in college. Well, he started for 6 years compared to McCarthy's 2. So I think you do have to take that into account. I think McCarthy has incredibly high upside, and with how badly the Vikings need a quarterback, how badly many of the teams in this draft need quarterback, I think you have to trade up and try to jump those other teams, which is what I have them doing here at 5.
Yeah, and all that to say, we didn't even mention that he's the youngest quarterback in this class at 22 years old, which is another thing that NFL teams just love, along with traits. And like you said, this guy is just extremely accurate over the middle of the field, as we saw in his time at Michigan. He's really good at playing inside a system. Michigan's system just happened to be not throwing the ball as much, but like what I saw from McCarthy, the tape shows that this guy probably is going to be a good player in the NFL.
Yeah, I would say he's definitely a risk compared to the other 3, but I think he definitely has a good chance to pan out. Then on to the Giants at 6. I think this has to be a receiver, especially with the top 4 quarterbacks off the board, and Malik Neighbors is sitting right there. So I think perfect guy to take a shot on. There are some concerns with him, maybe in a big city and a previous arrest on Bourbon Street in 2023, but this is such a good player. I also don't know how true those things are. You see stuff come out on social media, draft cycle. Some of it can be smokescreen, some of it's not substantial. So I still want to take a shot on the player that Malik Neighbors is. Very, very solid receiver. Absolute elite threat after the catch. Going to make a lot of players look silly with the ball in his hands. And that's something that the Giants have kind of struggled to find recently. You were hoping to get that in Kadarius Toney. Obviously, that didn't pan out. But Malik Neighbors is also a much better route runner than Kadarius Toney ever was. So this is a truly elite receiver prospect. I think right up there with Marvin Harrison Jr., though I'd still give MHJ the nod.
Yeah, this guy's going to be incredible with the ball in his hands at the next level. You just see over and over again in his tape at LSU just how special he is in the open field, creating separation, just checking most of the boxes that you'd like to see from a receiver prospect. And the Giants would truly benefit from getting a prospect like Neighbors here at 6.
Yeah, definitely. And staying on the offensive side of the ball here at number 7, I have the Tennessee Titans going Joe Alt. He's an absolutely freakish athlete at offensive tackle. I think according to RAS, was the 20th most athletic offensive tackle ever, and he didn't even do agility testing, which I think he would have tested incredibly well in as well. Very polished as a pass protector, very solid versus the run. He's going to be able to anchor out there on the blind side, on the left side, and the Titans really don't have anything in that offensive tackle room right now. It is a disaster, so I think Alt would bring much needed security into that offensive line.
Yeah, you hit just about everything there. Only thing I would add is this dude is a monster. 6'8", 322 pounds. Definitely the type of guy that you'd want anchoring your offensive line.
Yeah. Then your Falcons here at 8, it's going to be an edge rusher for you guys, and it's actually going to be a guy that I've had repeatedly falling down the board due to medical concerns, and that might give it away. It is Leatu Latu here at number 8. I think he's the best edge rusher in this class, and apparently some teams may have cleared him medically, might be good to go. So if Latu's good to go and you don't think the medical stuff will be an issue, I think he becomes a top 10 pick easily. He has the best pass rush move arsenal of any edge rusher in this class. He's never going to give up on a play. Almost endless arsenal of counter moves to go back and forth to. Extremely high motor. He isn't an otherworldly athlete, but he's definitely good enough. And with his technique, I think he's going to be a very, very good player in the NFL.
Yeah, I would love the pick as a Falcons fan, and it would tell me that the front office, the coaching staff, everyone involved with the organization in general is committed to win now. Leatu's not really a guy that you're going to want to wait to see some success later on down the road, because a lot of guys with his medical condition, the fused spine, they go on to only have an NFL career that lasts just a few years. I think you'd be absolutely thrilled as a Falcons fan to get 6 to 8 years out of this guy. So what that tells me is that the Falcons are committed to winning in this window in which they have all these weapons like Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, you name it. Kirk Cousins on this 4-year deal. I think this Leatu pick would show me and show Falcons fans that the organization wants to win and wants to contend right away.
Yeah, you look at Latu, and I think you look at this Kirk Cousins contract of how big it is and think, okay, where can we save money? Well, no better way to do that than get a stud edge rusher on a rookie deal, which I think is what you'd be able to do there with Latu. Then at number 9, I have the Chicago Bears taking Rome Odunze out of Washington. This guy is just a freak. In 2022, he was an elite deep threat, but he wasn't really much else than that. Then this year, really expanded his route tree, became even more effective across the middle of the field. Is elite at the catch point, made Michael Penix look a lot better than he was, frankly, sometimes on deep shots, has a monster catch radius, and even bringing in Keenan Allen, that doesn't stop you from taking Roma Dunze. You have DJ Moore, kind of your outside shifty receiver, Keenan Allen to be your slot guy, and then Roma Dunze is your big X deep threat on the outside. So I like this fit a lot for Chicago, and you take Caleb Williams at 1, now get him a weapon.
Yeah, and if you take Odunze here, that's pretty loaded arsenal of weapons for Caleb Williams. Definitely what you want to surround a rookie QB on a rookie deal with. And Odunze's a guy for me that's just electrifying to watch. You just see him put up these insane numbers at Washington, making his quarterback look extremely good throughout the season, made plays in the college football playoff. Love Odunze, love the fit to Chicago here.
Yeah, I think he would be amazing over there. Then the Jets at number 10, I have going Brock Bowers. This used to be a tackle all day, every day, but you signed Tyron Smith. While I do think that's a bit of a short-term move, I think it means you can't afford to take another position in this draft, and Bowers is just an elite tight end prospect. Is an exceptional receiver, not just down the field, but he can also take short passes to the house consistently. And then a lot of people have had questions about his blocking as the cycles moved on. Yeah, you put him against a stud edge rusher, he's not going to be able to hold up forever, but versus a linebacker, this is a guy who's going to be very solid in run blocking and can also help on a little block and release chip sometimes. So I think you throw that in there with his receiving capability, and I do think this is a better all-around tight end prospect than Kyle Pitts, although I would give Pitts the edge in purely the receiving threat department.
Yeah, and this is another guy like Neighbors that fits into the category of must-see TV with the ball in his hands. We saw that at Georgia time and time again, and like you said, while he's not that great of a pass protector when you put him against an edge, he's a great blocker in the run game. Once again, as we saw at Georgia, and definitely a prospect that will translate to the next level.
Yeah, then my Chargers here again at pick number 11. It's offensive tackle, and it's going to be Talisa Fuaga out of Oregon State. This is a guy that played right tackle at Oregon State and is just a big, powerful finisher in the run game. And if that doesn't scream Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense, I don't know what does. Fuaga is going to finish his blocks, make sure guys are completely out of the play when he's blocking them. He's solid in pass protection as well. The film is really good for him, and he was one of the few Pac-12 players that could actually cope with Laiatu this past season. Had some mild success versus him, so I like Fuaga a lot. I think he's a very powerful player. He could move to guard, but for the Chargers, I think he sticks out there at the right tackle spot.
Yeah, nothing like some big guys coming out of the newly deceased Pac-12 and
Well,
Talisa
Oregon
Fuaga.
State's still in the Pac too.
I guess we can let you slide there. I'm not sure about the existence of that, but yeah, Fuaga, another guy that doesn't have much finesse to his game, but like you said, just so powerful in the run game and definitely a great fit for the Chargers.
Yeah, I would be really happy with this pick as a Chargers fan. Honestly, we need a right tackle so badly. Then at number 12, the Denver Broncos take a guy that I think has slid a little bit here, even though it is only number 12, and that is Dallas Turner out of Alabama. Exceptional athlete off the edge, and the only questions of him really are his hand placement and technique. You would love to see that maybe get a little better, maybe develop some counter moves, but outside of that, this is a guy that looks like he was built in a lab to play 3-4 edge, can just fly off the edge towards the ball, can also drop into the flat to take away a running back. Very, very solid all-around player. I think Denver would be very happy with him to go over there and play in those, frankly, terrible new uniforms they had.
Yeah, I will second that opinion on the uniforms. And Dallas Turner, if not taken by the Atlanta Falcons there at 8, I know there's a little debate whether it will be him or Latu there. But if he slides to 12, that's a great value pick there for Denver and probably a guy that they can't pass up if he falls into their lap.
Yeah. And as far as the Broncos uniforms, again, the throwbacks are really nice, but the standard jerseys are not it. They do have a nice little Chargers lightning bolt on the shoulder, though, so shout out Denver for that. Appreciate you. Then the Raiders at 13, staying in the AFC West, as all three of the teams and after this trade are picking in a row here. I have them going with Toledo's Quinion Mitchell. This is just a prototypical CB1 type corner. Was very solid in man coverage at Toledo. Was a lot of time asked to kind of drop back and then drive down and make plays. Really showed adeptness for zone coverage as well. Just an all-around good corner. Can also provide adequate run support. I wouldn't say it's elite by any means, but just an all-around very, very good player. Don't let Toledo scare you. This is a guy that's going to make you very happy if your team picks him up.
Yeah, and this has been a guy that Mike has been really high on throughout the entire process, even when he was a little bit underrated by the rest of the NFL draft media world. And now we're seeing Mitchell get that deserved respect as CB1. He solidified that spot, and definitely going to be the first corner off the board if current trends continue.
We'll have to see. I think Terry and Arnold has a shot as well. But on to the Saints at 14. This has got to be offensive tackle. Ryan Ramchek's knee injuries. You don't know how much longer he's going to be able to play. Then Trevor Penning has not been great, and so it's going to be Olu Fashanu here at number 14. Very, very good pass protector. Can struggle with power rushers sometimes, and can struggle in the run game. But as a pure finesse pass protector, some of the best you'll see. Is a very athletic tackle as well. Probably right up there for most athletic tackle in this class. I think he's a really solid pass protecting tackle, as I've said, can slot in and play left tackle if you need him to. I think maybe he would move to the right side. I don't know how much I would love that move, but some people apparently say he could slide to the right. Personally, I would leave him at left, but honestly, the Saints could use help at either side, so I think they'd be happy either way.
Yeah, and you've got to like that this guy's coming out of Penn State with some pretty impressive tape against schools like Ohio State and Michigan. So you don't really have too much concern about the level of competition that he faced, and definitely a guy that would be a good fit at this spot.
Yeah, for sure. Then the Colts here at number 15. We know what Chris Ballard loves. Chris Ballard loves the athletes. You can basically mark his draft picks by RAS score, and they're all going to be pretty high. And what better guy to match that than Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU? This dude can absolutely fly. He looks super fast on tape and backed it up running a 4.33 at the combine. The route tree is not super complex, but also the LSU offense didn't really ask it to be. Just one deep and led the NCAA in touchdowns. So was very effective in his role. I think he is a great fit into this offense. You have Michael Pittman as your stereotypical X. Bring in Josh Downs as that slot guy, and now Brian Thomas is a Z and a deep threat. That's a very happy Anthony Richardson over there in Indianapolis. So I think this is a really good setup for this Colts offense.
Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr., just an electrifying player to watch, coming from an electrifying offense at LSU, obviously opposite neighbors and catching passes from Jaden Daniels. And I'm honestly so glad we're not allowing him to fall to the Chiefs here, because I think that would be a match made in heaven.
Yeah, he would be. I think he would be an elite fit with either the Bills or the Chiefs. But fortunately for the rest of the NFL, neither of those teams are in position to grab him. Then the Seahawks at 16, I have going Troy Fautanu out of Washington. This is a very, very good tackle. And he also, I think, could play guard in the NFL. He's a bit shorter for a tackle at only 6'3", but the arms are long. The arms are long enough to stick a tackle. It's just that height that you question, do you slide him into guard? Because he's athletic enough to play guard, has great movement skills, but for Seattle, who lost Damian Lewis in free agency, and you might already have that tackle in Abraham Lucas, I think you take Fautanu, slide him inside the guard, and just plug and play. I think you'd end up pretty happy with that. Also, pretty fun to keep him in Seattle.
Yeah, another guy coming out of the Pac-12. In this case, Faltanu coming over from Washington. And honestly, I don't really have anything to add to what you just said. I think you covered it all right there.
All right, we'll move on to Jacksonville at 17, and this is, I think, where Terry and Arnold goes. He is just an absolute. He's. I don't want to say pest because that might sound mean, but it's in the best way possible. He's going to be right up in your grill all the time. Is the best run support corner in this draft easily, and he's going to be all up in a receiver's business the entire route. And he's very good at doing that without getting flagged as well. He's not like what you saw with J.C. Horn in college, although the height difference between those two is pretty big. But Horn was physical and maybe a bit grabby, whereas Arnold is physical and good in press, but can then just stick on the receiver without committing flags a lot of the time. This is a guy who really came on this year as more teams threw away from Kool-Aid McKinstry and proved that he might even be a better player. So I like the fit opposite Tyson Campbell in Jacksonville. I think that's a very good corner duo for a team that desperately needs another one right now.
Yeah, definitely. Arnold is an ultra competitor. You could tell throughout the season that he was kind of upset that teams wanted to challenge him all the time in their attempts to avoid Kool-Aid McKinstry, and he made them pay quite frequently. You mentioned his greatness in the press, especially last season. This is also a guy who's super aggressive in run support and will translate well in that aspect, and just an ultra competitor once again, competing hard for both open space and the ball, as we saw at Alabama.
Yeah. Then the Bengals at pick 18, they need interior defensive line really badly. You lost DJ Reader in free agency, and I think you can bring in Byron Murphy here. He's a bit undersized at only about 6 foot, 300 pounds, but they've had success with undersized interior defensive linemen before. Think Geno Atkins. I'm not saying this is a direct comp, but if you're the Bengals, it might be hard not to at least see the vision there. Murphy is outstanding in the leverage game. He'll sometimes play down on his knees and still beat the offensive lineman in front of him. If you turn on the tape for him at Texas, it's absolutely wild to watch. Super entertaining. I think this is a guy that can make a big difference for Cincinnati for sure. Then at 19 for the Los Angeles Rams, they need corner, and they need a corner that can be very solid in coverage. They need a guy that's a good athlete, and who better to do that than Nate Wiggins, a guy I know as a Clemson student you like quite a bit.
Yeah, Nate Wiggins has got absolute wheels, as we saw at the combine. You got to assume that he's going to add 5 to 8, maybe 10 pounds before uh, week one in the NFL. But another guy that's just an ultra competitor, never gives up on a play. We've mentioned this a few times, but I just keep thinking back to that play against North Carolina in his final season at Clemson, where he chases down the ball carrier and gets the strip at the 1 yard line. Definitely going to be a guy that is going to compete every single snap.
Yeah, he's a fiery competitor for sure. Very good at coverage. Can really stick on receivers' hips exceptionally well. The one drawback for him is he is frankly horrific in run support. Not good at all, but I would personally rather my corners be able to cover than come up and tackle. I think that's more important. So I think Wiggins can do that at a high level, and I think he will be a good fit for the Rams. Then on to the Steelers at 20. I think they go offensive tackle back to back years in the draft, and this year, it is going to be Amarius Mims out of Georgia, joining his teammate Broderick Jones over there. Mims is exceptional. The tape is so good. He can sometimes overset a little bit, try to beat edge rushers to the spot, and it can get him caught out. That's something that sometimes tackles will struggle with, especially at the next level, making that transition. But he only has 8 starts. I think if the tape on him was, if there was more of it, if he had started for multiple seasons, this is a guy that might even go top 10. But I wish there was more tape, because the tape we do have is so good a lot of the time. But I think I can't really rationalize him going before this spot, although I do think he'll be a very good player.
Yeah, and another monster at 6'7", 340. Like you said, though, that concern with the lack of tape. This guy's going to be somewhat of a project in the NFL, you would think, but good value uh, here at this spot. Just when you consider all the guys going around him.
Yeah, definitely. Then on to 21 for the Miami Dolphins. I'm going Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. They desperately need interior offensive line help, and I think Powers Johnson is the best option for that in the class. Very cerebral center. It's going to really be a captain of the offensive line. I would say if there are any drawbacks, it's his length. Does not have exceptional length, which matters in the trenches, but you can you not necessarily get away with, but it's easier to pass by at a lower length at center. So I think if you plug him in there, he's going to be highly effective, and I like the fit there for Miami.
Yeah, for sure. And this guy is able to generate a ton of power, which without really needing that buildup that you see some other guys needing. So definitely a great anchor both in the pass and run game for an NFL team that gets him.
Yeah, then at number 22, the Philadelphia Eagles, they need help all over the secondary, so why not get a guy that can play all over the secondary in Cooper DeJean out of Iowa? I do think he can stick on the boundary. My favorite fit for him at the next level is a nickel corner that can kind of move all over the place, do whatever, sometimes be inside outside type guy, but some people like him at safety more. What really matters is he can do everything. He can play any position you want him to and be highly effective in that role. And for a secondary that was frankly dysfunctional for most of last season, I think that would be a big difference maker.
Yeah, it seems like Cooper DeJean is a guy that you can just kind of plug and play pretty much anywhere in the secondary, as you mentioned. It remains to be seen how effective he would be as a pure corner in the NFL. It's pretty popular for him to profile as a safety nowadays, like you mentioned. But I would also love to see DeJean get some reps returning kicks, whether it be kickoffs or punt returns.
Yeah, I think he would be a very solid kick return at the next level, too. You just wonder if a team would want to send a starting DB out there, but I do agree that if he does get the
Hey,
chance, he'd be very good in that role.
the new
Then
rules, the new rules kind of protect the returners a little bit, so
that's
maybe
true.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe flash that speed a little bit.
it's a bit less of a risk now. So you never know. Maybe he does do that. Then on to 23, back to the Chargers here after the trade with Minnesota. And it has to be a receiver. And for me, it's going to be the guy I like most left on the board since it is my team. I'm going Adonai Mitchell. I think this is an absolutely outstanding receiver prospect. There are some effort concerns where he said he would play at 85% sometimes, be able to stay out there for entire drives, and you kind of take plays off. I'm I'm not sure that's going to be wholly welcomed with open arms at the next level, but his crispness as a route runner, his ability to win down the field, I think is so good that it's worth taking a shot on, especially down at 23. I wonder how the fit into the offense will be. Sometimes you worry about Greg Roman and receivers, but I think with Justin Herbert, you need to get a receiver in there for him to throw to, and it's clear that Quentin Johnston is, at least for now, not that guy. So I think Adonai Mitchell can really inject some life into this passing offense after the losses of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen.
Yeah, A.D. Mitchell is definitely your big-bodied wide receiver one type player, kind of a ball-tracking mix of Remo Dunze and Marvin Harrison Jr., if I may make that comparison just a little bit. And then on top of all of that, aside from football, the dude's name is literally Hebrew for God, so probably a
Yeah,
can't-miss pick there, in my opinion.
yeah. One of the things that I think only a receiver, maybe a DB, could get away with there. Then
For
on to
sure.
the Cowboys at number 24. They also need tackle after losing Tyron Smith in free agency. Why not bring in J.C. Latham? This is a guy that is extremely powerful, has vice like hands. If he catches you, you're not going anywhere. Extremely powerful. I think a very solid tackle. Can also struggle with that oversetting, like I talked about with the Marius Mims. And then sometimes these freakishly athletic Alabama tackles like Evan Neal, Alex Leatherwood have not panned out, but you know what they say, scout the player, not the helmet. And I think Latham is an exceptional player. I think he'll be good at the next level. And honestly, I think he goes before 24. I didn't have the spot for it in this particular iteration of the mock draft, but I definitely think he'd be solid for Dallas.
Yeah, and a young guy, only 21 years old at the time of the draft, obviously, and also 6'6", 335. Another thing that scouts are saying about Latham is that he's extremely light balanced for a man his size. So those quick feet, hopefully for him and for whatever team drafts him, hopefully that translates into some success at the next level.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think there's definitely a world where he is highly effective in that role. Then for the Packers, this is a weird spot in this draft cycle. I feel like I never quite know what to do here. They're a very weirdly constructed team, but it's going to be Graham Barton this time. They need help kind of across the offensive line everywhere. So, like I said with DeGene in the secondary, why not take a guy that can play everywhere? Barton is an incredibly powerful player. I think might stick at tackle. I honestly like him as a center at the next level. I think he could also play guard. He can play at least three positions on the offensive line, maybe even all five. And for a Packers team that guys like that, like Elton Jenkins, can be highly effective, why not do it again with Graham Barton? So I definitely think that makes sense. Then on to the Buccaneers at number 26. They need an edge rusher badly, and Jared Verse has somehow fallen all the way down to 26 here. So that is going to be the pick for Tampa Bay. Very powerful guy, extremely effective bull rush, and I think if he develops some counter moves outside of that, maybe learns how to anchor a bit better versus the run, this could be a very, very good player at the next level.
Yeah, Verse, definitely a guy that falls into the category of game disruptor. We saw him do that against Clemson and other times throughout his career, starting off at Albany and then making his way to Florida State. A guy that has not been playing football for too long in his life, but definitely great value all the way down here in the 20s. Jared Verse, great pick.
Yeah. Then the Arizona Cardinals at 27, I have going Jerzon Johnny Newton out of Illinois. This is another undersized interior defensive lineman with extreme pass rush upside. He can really get after the quarterback. That's something that's hard to find on the interior of the defensive line. And for a team like the Cardinals that struggles with pass rush and just defensive line play in general as much as they do, I think that would be such a perfect fit down there in Arizona. So I'm sending Johnny Newton out there.
Yeah, and this is another guy that I've been seeing a lot of smoke that the Falcons like a little bit. He can play sideline to sideline with his quickness, and he's extremely powerful with his frame. Him falling all the way down here to the 20s would be quite the steal for Arizona.
Yeah, for sure. And the Buffalo Bills at 28, it needs to be a receiver. You look at this team; they've lost Stephon Diggs. It feels like they've lost the entire receiver room, honestly. and I'm going to inject some life back into it, but not necessarily with who you might expect here. We're going Lad McConkey to the Buffalo Bills. This guy's a very good athlete, a very fluid route runner, can win both in the slot and sometimes even down the field. He's a very versatile guy, and I think this is a guy that it's not necessarily Khalil Shakir. I don't think you're drafting another one of the exact same player here. I think this you're really going to be able to form a more dynamic receiving core by doing this. I think McConkey's a really good player that is frankly getting slept on a bit in this draft cycle right now.
Yeah, another guy out of Georgia that it was just incredible to watch with the ball in his hands. You got to wonder if his size and strength might limit his potential a little bit, but the athleticism, the route running, definitely there for McConkey and would be a great fit in Buffalo.
Then the Detroit Lions at number 29. This is another interesting spot. I feel like there's many ways they could go, but it's going to be Kool-Aid McKinstry. There's some off-field stuff with the Lions corners right now, and then the on-field fact is they're not very good anyway. So I think bringing in a true guy that can play the boundary, and you bring him in with his former teammate Brian Branch in the slot there, I think that's pretty fun. McKinstry is an extremely disciplined corner, has a really good feel for coverage, is not overly aggressive, is going to be very, very solid. Not necessarily a guy that's going to blow you away athletically, but he's just going to be a guaranteed good player due to his technical ability.
Yeah, and how crazy is it if I would have told you a year ago that Kool-Aid McKinstry would be the second cornerback drafted from his own team, I think you would have called me a crazy person. And now he's all these picks behind Terry and Arnold. How crazy is that?
Yeah, it is a bit crazy, but that's what happens when no one throws at you all year. I definitely still think he
Yeah.
could be a better player than Arnold in the NFL. Either one could be better. We'll just have to wait and see. Then the Baltimore Ravens at 30, they need a tackle, and Tyler Guyton is still on the board. Jordan Morgan is still on the board, but we're going to go down a little bit. We're going to have some fun here. We're going to take Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU. I think this is a very fun developmental tackle, absolutely freak athlete, and with how good the Ravens are at developing offensive linemen, I think he becomes very successful in Baltimore. And you're not really sure how much you can rely on Ronnie Stanley right now. And I think Suamataia is perfect to maybe learn under him for a couple years, and then when he retires or maybe leaves or inevitably gets injured again, you can plug him in, and I think he'll be an effective player for Baltimore. Then at number 31, the San Francisco 49ers also need tackle, but they also need guard even more so. And I think this is where Jordan Morgan goes off the board. I think he is a very solid tackle, another guy that can struggle with that oversetting, but a lot of times if you move a guy to guard, that's not as much of a problem for them. So I think he's a very good fit there. They need help on the interior of that offensive line. I think Morgan would be very helpful for them in that role. And then finally, the Kansas City Chiefs here at pick 32. It needs to be a receiver. And there's two or three guys I'm torn between here. Love the upside of Xavier Legette. I love the pure speed of Xavier Worthy. I love my guy Ricky Pearsall from Florida. I think he just has vices for hands. But it is going to be Xavier Worthy for me here at 32. That's just a terrifying combination, him and Patrick Mahomes. I know you brought in Hollywood Brown to be a deep threat. Xavier Worthy's just better. I think he's just better. And that's what's more important to me when I'm scouting these guys and doing these mock drafts, just who I think is the best fit. I think Xavier Worthy would be exceptional in that Chiefs offense. So give me the explosiveness, even more explosiveness to Kansas City, which as a Chargers fan is not something I'm excited to see at all.
Yeah, and you mentioned the fits there. We've already seen what an extremely fast receiver can do in that Kansas City offense in Tyreek Hill. Not necessarily saying that Xavier Worthy is going to be Tyreek Hill, but he does bring about that same factor of speed. And I agree with you there. And I am very sorry for you as an AFC West fan. If the Chiefs are to get Xavier Worthy here, I think, like you said, that would be a lethal combination with he and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and it's not just speed, too. He has really good hands. I think people started to get down on him a bit because in 2022 he struggled with some drops. Well, he also played with a broken hand that year, so maybe give the guy a break. He was great this past season, not nearly as many problems with the hands, and great deep ball tracking as well. So I think he'll be great for Kansas City. But that is going to be it for the mock draft, although if I heard correctly from you, there were a couple guys you were a bit surprised that I did not have in here. So who were those?
Yeah, first off, Michael Penix Jr. What's up with him sliding down the draft boards? This is a guy that many Falcons fans that aren't as into the draft process are saying, why aren't we getting this guy at 8? How is he not even in the first round in general?
Well, Michael Penix Jr. It's really two big things. It's general accuracy and injuries. The injuries are a huge concern. Multiple season-ending injuries. He's also 24, which doesn't help. And then you look at the general accuracy. He played with the best receiving core in the country with Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. That's the best trio in the country. And all three of those guys have exceptional catch radiuses. Odunze has the exceptional ball skills. So I think a lot of times they made Penix look better than he actually was. Where if you turn on the film and look at the ball placement, it's not always that great, especially deep down the field. He actually had the second worst deep ball accuracy of the top, I'll say top six quarterbacks because he was even lower than Spencer Rattler in that metric. He was only above J.J. McCarthy. So that deep ball accuracy is very concerning. I will say he's very good driving the ball, especially outside the numbers in the intermediate areas of the field. But the general accuracy when he has to put touch on the ball is a huge concern for me with him.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. And 4 season-ending injuries in his first 4 seasons, that's not something that I would be able to look past as an NFL GM. He did put out an article in the Players Tribune pretty much pleading his case with NFL GMs and scouts just to give him a chance, arguing that they've seen how he can come back from injury, and he later went on to say, and I quote, that he would be more concerned if he hadn't gone through an injury uh, of this magnitude, like he did 4 times in his career. And then the second thing for me about Penix is the defense, the best defense he faced all season in Michigan, didn't look all that great. Struggled with the accuracy there, especially with the deep balls, as you mentioned. A few times his receivers would break loose in that game, and he would just flat out miss them. So I definitely understand your rationale for not having Penix in the first round. And now let's go to another Pac-12 quarterback who did not fall in your first round mock draft, and that's Bo Nix.
Yeah, it's a lot of the same things as Michael Penix. Honestly, obviously doesn't have the injury history as much, but the age. Bo Nix is the oldest quarterback in this draft class. He's already over 24 years old, and his general accuracy is not the best. Can struggle sometimes. He also didn't really throw deep that much, and when he did, it was just massive shots to Troy Franklin on 9 routes, who was able to run under the ball quite effectively. So I'm not sure how much I trust him intermediate or deep down the field, but we don't know if that was just the Oregon offense as well. But I will say Bo Nix is a good creator. He can kind of make stuff happen. Has some improv skills. And Auburn Bo Nix and Oregon Bo Nix are two different players. So if you're thinking Auburn Bo Nix, erase that from your mind. He's much, much better than that now, although I still would not say he is a first round pick by any means. I would expect both him and Penix to go somewhere on day 2.
Staying with the Ducks, another guy that did not land in the first round would be Troy Franklin. Why is that?
Well, this is a guy that a lot of people have wanted in the first round because he's such a good deep threat, but the issue is he doesn't do anything else. His route tree is streaks, maybe a curl, maybe a flat route, and that's kind of it. Not super developed as a route runner at all, and does have decent hands and does have decent deep ball tracking, but is just not dynamic enough of a player, in my opinion, to warrant a first round pick.
Yeah, and then moving over to the defensive side of the ball, tell us why Darius Robinson does not land in your first round.
Yeah, this is a guy who's a Senior Bowl standout, Senior Bowl MVP actually, and is a very flexible inside out type guy. Can be a 4-3 defensive end, or excuse me, 3-4 or 4-3 defensive end. Sometimes can play 3 tech as well. Can be an interior pass rusher in sub packages. Super flexible. I definitely think he could be a first round pick. Just in this iteration of the mock draft falls out. I've had him going to the Lions quite a few times. I like that spot for him, but they took McKinstry today, so Robinson falls out of the first as a result.
And then a position in general that we didn't see go in the first round is linebackers. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the best one is Junior Colson, in my opinion, out of Michigan. I think him and Edgerrin Cooper are both right up there for LB1 in this year's class. Peyton Wilson's a great athlete, but the injury history for him is concerning. And then Jeremiah Trotter, I would say, is linebacker 4. He's decent at least, but I think Colson could sneak into the first round. It's just who's going to take a linebacker. It's hard to really be able to tell. You obviously don't know what any of these teams are going to do until draft night, but linebacker is a less valuable position now in the NFL, and you don't really see him go as high anymore, with the exception of maybe Jack Campbell last season. But I think if one does sneak into the first round, like I said, it's Junior Colson. But as for right now, I don't think one makes it in this year.
Well, I believe that wraps up our NFL talk, and we're going to shift over to Major League Baseball. And can't talk about Major League Baseball with a Reds fan without talking about Elly De La Cruz, who is absolutely
Yes.
on fire right now. Micah, take it away.
Okay. He's been on fire since the solar eclipse. It's been amazing. There's a picture I'm going to put up on the screen right now in the edit of him just staring into the sun with the eclipse glasses on. And ever since then, the sun must have got caught in his eyes or in his body or something because he is on fire. He had another homer tonight versus the Phillies, his 7th of the season. That's tied for 3rd in the MLB with Pete Alonso. And then for all the people saying all he does is strike out, let me tell you about his line versus the Angels in this past weekend series. He went 4 for 7 with a home run, only struck out one time the entire series, and walked 5 times, including a 4-walk game on Saturday. So looks like he does a bit more than just strike out, and the power has really shown up. He's starting to hit the ball in the air a lot more, which is really encouraging. That was something he really struggled when he first came to the league, was really slamming the ball down into the ground, but he's figured it out. Then he's still electric on the base paths too. He's tied for the MLB lead in stolen bases with 12 with the Brewers' Bryce Terang, and he created a run by doing so versus the Angels, where he stole second. Then, as he was stealing third, forced a bad throw by trying to steal third, and then was able to just basically walk home. So he provides that kind of cause chaos effect that you used to see from Billy Hamilton on the Reds. But the difference is Elly is a monster hitter, whereas Billy Hamilton was lucky to hit 220. So he's just an exceptional player. The OPS is top 5 in the MLB right now. It's over 1, and he has been just incredibly fun to watch. Him and Spencer Steer both. I can't wait until we get Matt McClain back from injury in the fall. Once you get all 3 of those guys together, it's going to be, I think, a deadly lineup. They were one of only 7 MLB teams to not be shut out on the season until Monday, when they got shut out by the Phillies and Ranger Suarez. But interestingly enough, the 6 teams left that have not been shut out, 3 of them are still in the Central, in the Brewers, the Pirates, and the Cubs. The other 3 are the Braves, the Orioles, and another team who I've forgotten. But there is another team out there. I know they're in the AL. It's the Royals. The Royals are that 16 that have yet to be shut out on the season. But the Reds' offense has just been super encouraging for a lot of this year, except for Santiago Espinal, who has been depressing. Although he did go 3 for 4 tonight with a homer, so maybe he's going to turn it around. I highly doubt it. But Elly has been amazing. It's super encouraging. Him and Nick Lodolo both have just been joys to watch as a Reds fan so far this season. And Lodolo gets the start again tomorrow, which I'm super excited for.
Yeah, and Elly De La Cruz coming a long way, even from the beginning of the season when he was dubbed by MLB X, MLB Twitter as Error De La Strikeout, which has proven not to be the case ever since that point. Absolutely on fire, as you mentioned. Love everything that you just said about Elly and agree with pretty much all of it. Another guy that's absolutely on fire is the catcher for my Braves, Travis d'Arnaud. Just ended a stretch over the past few games in which he had 5 home runs in the span of 8 at-bats, including 3 home runs in one game, filling in very nicely for Sean Murphy, who went down early in the season with an oblique injury. Going to miss quite some time with that. Chadwick Trump assuming backup catcher duties. And Travis d'Arnaud has just been mashing over the past week or so, continuing to do so. And something cool that I read about on Twitter earlier today, in an interview with MLB Network, he talked about how last Friday, when he hit the 3 home runs in the game, was his late grandfather's birthday. And his dad actually, uh, according to Travis, his dad prayed for a sign from God that his grandpa was doing okay. And boy, did he get one. His son hitting 3 home runs on his grandfather's birthday. And man, Travis d'Arnaud, just incredible stuff. A guy that was DFA'd from the Mets just 5 years ago, which is really hard to believe. And the Mets got to be kicking themselves for that one. Just a real feel good story for the Braves, who are on fire in their own right as well. Max Fried completing, throwing a complete game against the Marlins, only allowing 3 hits in the process and doing so very efficiently. The game only lasting an hour and 52 minutes, which is just incredible to think about.
Yeah, and it looks like a surefire recipe of being a good catcher is being the Brave system at any point in time. Because Travis d'Arnaud now is playing well. Sean Murphy obviously was good before he got to the Braves, but then William Contreras, too, over at the Brewers now, former Brave, has also been raking this season. Speaking of people raking, let's talk about Mike Trout, who's finally healthy so far this season, as I knock on wood, trying to make sure he doesn't get hurt. That would be awful. But hit his ninth homer of the season this past week, which is tied for the MLB lead with Marcell Ozuna. And those are two very different players. One you definitely would expect to be leading the league in homers this early, and one maybe you wouldn't be. So I I've loved Trout's start to the season. This Angels team has, I think, been better than expected. They're still third in the AL West right now, but they've been playing at least decently so far this year, and Reed Detmers has been dealing for them as well. He's been outstanding so far.
Yeah, for sure. And got to give some love to Ron Washington, former Braves third base coach, who's doing a pretty nice job managing that Angels squad, even after the slow start they got off to, sort of turning it around over there. Love to see Mike Trout back to his MVP form.
Yes, definitely. Then let's talk about a former Angel here, Shohei Ohtani, who this past week broke an exceptional milestone, hit his 176th home run to break Hideki Matsui's record for the most MLB home runs by a Japanese-born player. So very, very cool for Shohei. This is a player that I love watching. It's hard not to love watching Shohei Ohtani. The dude is must-see TV and honestly has one of the smoothest swings in baseball too. It just is a thing of beauty the way he swings a baseball bat. But so congratulations to Ohtani for that. I know it has probably not been an easy start of the season for him with all the off-field stuff, but he just keeps playing right through it. So you got to give credit to him for that. So props to Ohtani.
Yeah, for sure. Congratulations to Shohei Ohtani. But like you mentioned, that off the field stuff, I think it's just incredible how much that has been swept under the rug. I think that if it was any other player, we would still be talking about that to this day. But honestly, I haven't seen very much Ohtani gambling stuff on Twitter, at least for a week and a half now. So that's encouraging to see, I guess. But definitely seems like a cover job, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know. I think the reason it's not being seen as much is because Ipe was indicted by the FBI and tried. So I think that has something to do with it. I think the fact that Ipe has actually been in custody by the FBI and interviewed, and everything is pointing to him after an FBI investigation. I'm going to trust the FBI on this one. I don't think Ohtani was doing anything nefarious, especially when you have the released calls between Ipe and a bookie talking about how he was good for the money. He had a special way of getting it. So
Well,
I'm going
well
to
then,
clear. I'm going to
Well,
clear
then
Ohtani
that
here.
speaks to the fact that Ohtani was so locked in on baseball that he just casually didn't realize that $16 million were missing from his account.
I mean, when you get 700 million, what's 16?
Well, he won't be getting that
I know
seven
he
hundred
wasn't paid it
million
all
for a
at
while,
once. Yeah, we're going to be celebrating Shohei Ohtani Day in 2040, but
for sure. For sure,
Anyway, credit to Ohtani for his good start to the season. And speaking of good
absolutely.
starts, let's talk about the power of friendship and the Cleveland Guardians, who are 17-6 right now, leading the AL Central ahead of the Tigers and Royals, who both sit at 14-10. This is just an entire division of the power of friendship right now. It's three teams with great starts, especially the Guardians, who I thought were not going to be able to hit worth anything this season, but they actually have the second highest run total in the MLB, just behind the Braves, and a run differential in the 50s. So it's been an outstanding start for Cleveland.
Yeah, and getting the win on Tuesday night as well against Boston 4-1 in a late rally there. You talk about the power of friendship. There's only one Guardians fan I know in the entire world, and that
That's
would be
one
our
more,
youth
or no, we
pastor,
know the same
Kale
Guardians
Downer.
fan. Yeah, we know the same one.
And he is not one to even call them the Guardians. So big Indians guy, Kale Downard. If you see this podcast, big shout to the Cleveland Guardians.
Yes, exceptional start for them. And now let's talk about a not so exceptional start. The Houston Astros. They only have 7 wins right now. They're the fourth worst team in baseball, out of only the White Sox, the Rockies, and the Marlins. What is going on in Houston right now?
Yeah, it's tough when you run into the buzzsaw that are the Atlanta Braves. But all kidding aside, even if you take away that 3-game sweep, the Astros have been absolutely terrible, and that includes Jose Abreu, who has a worse WAR than you as a listener have sitting right
Yeah,
now.
one of my favorite things I've seen on Twitter this past week was, I don't know if you guys have seen the baseball reference compare graphics where it does 2 players next to each other and their stats. We had Jose Abreu versus a Rock, and if I can find that, I will put that on the screen for you guys. But the Rock had a higher WAR than Jose Abreu at this point in the season, which is just sad. Maybe it's the White Sox, the former White Sox in him, is still infecting him somehow.
Yeah, Abreu having a worse start to this season than Marcelo Zuna did in 2023, which is just incredible to
Yeah,
say out loud as I watched Marcelo Zuna struggle to start last year.
yeah. Then let's talk about some young guys here. The Baltimore Orioles have called up another prospect as after Jackson Holiday started 1 for 30, which by the way I think he'll figure it out eventually. But they've called up Heston Kierstad, a first baseman who was leading that red hot Norfolk Tides lineup, and now gets called up to the major league level. And it feels like Baltimore just has an endless supply of these young guys they keep bringing up. And is it me or do they all look the same as well? They're all
Yeah,
identical.
they all have that great blonde hair flowing from that hat, just some hair comparable to my co-host over here on the right. Just an immaculate flow all these Orioles have got going. And like you mentioned, Jackson Holiday, honestly, off to probably the worst start that anyone could have imagined. Just one hit in his 33 at bats, a 0.61 average, and a 175 OPS, just one RBI. I agree with you in that his career will only be up from here. It's pretty hard for it not to be. But I do
Yeah.
think Jackson Holiday is going to pan out in the long run for the Orioles. And I just absolutely love that the Orioles are infusing themselves with more youth here with Kierstad.
Yeah, it's been super encouraging. This Orioles team is very fun. They're tied with the Yankees right now atop the AL East, and if those aren't two different teams, the mostly older New York Yankees, with the exception of Juan Soto and Anthony Volpe, versus the young buck Baltimore Orioles over there. So that should be a very fun division battle the entire way. But speaking of division battles, let's talk about the NL West, where the Padres are making a run at the Dodgers right now, who are just 4-6 in their last 10. So think San Diego can maybe mount a challenge here, or do you think maybe even another team like the Diamondbacks or the Giants can make a run, or do you think this is still a Dodgers division?
Honestly, I would lean more Padres than Giants if we're talking about competition to the Dodgers. I do think the Dodgers win the division, but the Padres have been incredibly strong so far to start the season, and especially against the Dodgers. We've seen them put up good fights in the Seoul series in South Korea, and then taking a series against the Dodgers once again here in the early season. Quite honestly, I never really bought into the Giants hype. I know you were high on them to begin the
Well,
season,
Blake
and
Snell's been horrific so
yeah,
far. His ERA is almost
he has
10.
been so bad. I'll give you that. But
Yeah,
I'm just not sure where the offensive production is going to come from this Giants lineup on a consistent basis, and for that reason, I think it's going to be Dodgers small gap, Padres small gap, Giants in this division for me throughout the year.
I think the Diamondbacks are still under the radar. They're sitting at third in the division right now, right around 500. I think they could maybe make some noise. They've been just kind of middling so far. I do think they improve a little bit as the season goes on, but I kind of like the Padres right now. This is a team that has historically have not been able to buy a win versus the Dodgers in the regular season, and already a series win on the year. So I think it's a very encouraging sign early. You have Fernando Tatis Jr. playing incredible baseball right now, and this is a very fun Padres team, so I like them a lot. But I think that is it for the MLB stuff this week, unless you have anything else to add.
The only
All
thing I
right.
would add is that at the conclusion of this recording that we have reached right now, Clemson and Georgia were still battling in a midweek showdown on the diamond, 3-3 in the top of the 14th. So if you're
Wow.
really using your context clues, you might be able to figure out when we are recording this episode for your
Yes.
viewing enjoyment.
It was your turn to watch a baseball game in the background this week, so
Yeah,
we're
so
gonna.
so if you've made it this far and you're wondering why I keep looking this way periodically, that would be why. And it looks like Clemson has a man on second base in the top of the 14th inning with one out. So
Well,
hopefully by the time this is posted, the Tigers have advanced to 33-7 overall.
for your sake, I hope they win, and also because I cannot stand Georgia. But that is it for this week's episode. We'll be back next week to recap the entire NFL draft, which should be fun. We'll have some more MLB stuff, but for now, we will see you guys next week.